Welcome back, everyone. A lot of you reported audio difficulties in the first 5:30 live stream, so we're going to go ahead and redo it again for you because this is a very important update and we want to make sure all of you have all of the latest information. So starting first with the infrared satellite imagery here, you can see Idalia has been steadily strengthening during the day. It's now near, not quite hurricane strength, but now near hurricane strength and likely will become a hurricane later tonight as it moves into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, where conditions appear very favorable for additional intensification. Now, let's address the question on everyone's mind: where will Idalia go and what impacts may it bring? Starting first, currently 70 miles per hour, just short of hurricane force. Winds movement now to the north at 8 miles per hour. In terms of the track, it'll continue to move to the north over the next day or so, and then gradually turn to the northeast, moving over North Florida, and then along or over southeastern Georgia coastline and South Carolina. In terms of intensity, now forecast to be a major hurricane as it approaches the Florida Big Bend. All right, now all these colors, what do all these colors mean? And this is probably the most important thing we will talk about today. Who is under warnings? If you're in this red area here, I'm gonna turn the cities on so you can see. The red area is a hurricane warning, which means hurricane conditions are expected within that area. That includes Tampa Bay, northward through the Big Bend, and along the panhandle here, Apalachicola. What does it mean if I'm under a hurricane warning? That means hurricane conditions are expected and you need to take precaution to protect yourself against those powerful winds. Specifically, what does that mean? Well, you could have sustained power outages for several days. So make sure all of your communication, electronic devices are charged up. Make sure your gasoline is topped off. You've got plenty of gasoline for your automobiles. Make sure you've got all your supplies, prescription, food, that you're ready to stay put if these conditions move into your community. It will not be safe to be moving about, not only during the storm, but it might not be safe to move about for several days after. So get what you need to be comfortable for a couple of days. It also means that you should be finalizing protective action for your home, making sure your home is protected from those strong winds. That means securing the windows, the garage, and make sure you're protected from those winds. What about these other areas on the map? The pink area is a hurricane watch, but that may be upgraded to a warning at a later time. Yellow area here is a tropical storm watch. That includes much of the Florida East Coast from Melbourne northward, Daytona and Jacksonville. The blue area here, including Fort Myers, you're under a tropical storm warning. That means that tropical storm conditions are expected within your area. And then it'll move off the coastline there. So these watches and warnings may have to extend northeastward along the southeast coast with that track. One of the most hazardous parts of a storm like this, especially in this part of the Florida Peninsula, which is very susceptible to storm surge, is so now we have storm surge warning from Apalachicola around and through Tampa Bay, including Tampa Bay to just south of Tampa Bay. What does that mean? That means that life-threatening storm surge is expected within that area. Now, some of you, many of you watching, or either have or know people who have been under evacuation orders. You've been ordered to evacuate. We evacuate based off storm surge, and this is why. This is why those evacuations are being ordered, and specifically, the forecasts behind that are propping up those warnings and evacuation. I want you to look at some of these values here. If we zoom in, Tampa Bay, the potential for 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. 4 to 7 feet. So remember, I stand 6 feet tall, so that's potentially above my head in terms of storm surge. Look at the values up here in the Big Bend here, 8 to 12 feet along the Nature Coast and Cedar Key. Cedar Key is right smack in the middle of that area. I'm especially concerned for them. If you're watching from Cedar Key, it is imperative that you take this very seriously, and if ordered to evacuate, heed those evacuations immediately. The entire island could be completely cut off with conditions like that. We'll zoom back out a little bit. You see that these storm surge values are starting to extend along the southeast coastline now. So now coastal Georgia, portions of coastal South Carolina, including Charleston, now you have 2 to 4 feet of potential storm surge coming your way. Also down here, Fort Myers, you're down at 2 to 4 feet. Down here, 3 to 5 along here to the west over in Apalachicola. So if you're anywhere in these colored areas, it means that coastal flooding, potential life-threatening storm surge could occur. So take precaution. If you've been ordered to evacuate, it is imperative that you follow those instructions immediately. Do not second guess those emergency management officials. Now, we've been talking all week about the heavy rainfall threat. This is the flood risk. So this graphic is just a simplification of the flood risk. Stated simply, if you're in this red area here extending from North Florida through Jacksonville, Savannah, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, and Jacksonville, North Carolina, you have a high probability of potential flooding from rain. This is rainfall, not storm surge. This is rainfall. So you really need to be on the lookout in these areas for heavy rain. Similar to what we were talking about down here in Florida, as these rains move into your area, it will not be safe to move around. So start thinking about what you need to do to stay put as these conditions move into your area. We'll be back tomorrow with more live stream updates, and you can always get more timely information from hurricanes.gov.